Hey everyone, welcome to the program, WRSA Radio. I'm your host, G1, as always. Hope you're having a good week. I've been very busy lately with multiple things going on. Unfortunately, none of them job related, but that's beside the point. I have missed putting out a show. I've missed you guys for the last couple of weeks, and so I got a little bit of catching up to do. I missed the whole JFK document release, which I had talked about on the show before, that I was looking forward to. I was hoping we were going to get some things, but this has really not been a huge deal because we really didn't learn that much from it, or at least we haven't so far. The big stuff is still yet to be let out. There's been a lot of talk about that on other channels already, so I'm not going to get into it in this episode. I'll wait to see if anything more happens on that front. And when I get the opportunity to do my own digging into the documents, I will do that and see maybe there's something that's been missed and hasn't been reported on or talked about yet. So we shall see. That'll be a future episode. Several other stories going on, but this week. But the major one has been the one that I will get into here in the show, and that's the so-called signal scandal. Oh, Signal Gate. Everything's a gate, This is the reporter from The Atlantic being accidentally included in on a private chat between the administration staff about actions in Yemen against the Houthis, however you pronounce that. I say accidentally using the air quotes because I'm not sure that it was necessarily an accident. I believe that as this goes along, we're going to learn more and more about how this happened, and it's going to actually really become a scandal, although not how the left thinks it's going to be. They're trying to use this as a hammer to beat Hegseth and Gabbard over the head with it and get them to resign, which I don't see happening. I think that's nonsense. I think the best course of action is for Trump to simply ignore the chatter about it, and they should just stop answering questions about it. Just leave it alone and move on. Just treat it like the accident that it is. Learn the lessons from it and just forget it. What happens at lower levels will be a different story. And by the way, I think that's what Trump is doing. It's kind of what we have seen so far. He's like, hey, is what it is. I don't really know much about it. I wasn't involved in the conversation, so whatever. So I think that's kind of the course of action that they're going to take. But the lower levels, kind of at other levels of this story, that's going to be different. We know that the Uniparty is going to try to make hay with this and kind of launch a hearing or in Congress or some BS. There's even a lawsuit that has already been filed by some open records group demanding that all of those signal chat messages have to be preserved as public record. Well, surprise, that lawsuit has just been assigned by a totally coincidental, guys. It's just totally coincidence. The same judge that is hearing on the lawsuit against the admin for the Venezuelan terrorist, the Trinidad Agua, whatever their name is, those gang members who were being deported and sent to their new prison home in El Salvador. It's the same judge. He's already ruled against the administration. In fact, he's gotten several cases already against the administration. He's a known anti-Trump person. That's just totally such a coincidence that he got that case. I'm sure that there's nothing to see there, right? I just wonder how that happened. Like I said, totally coincidence. Now, Signal is a commercial app for smartphones that provides end-to-end encrypted comms for its users, in case you did not already know. It's kind of like Telegram, a couple of other, those kind of apps out there. There is an interesting feature about it. You can set all of the messages to automatically delete after a set time period. So the lawsuit may already be a just complete stupid waste of time, since all of those messages could already be gone. They just automatically delete. They go away. You don't have a way of exporting them and producing them down the road. Which is an interesting kind of byproduct of some of these messaging applications. There's no way to actually export the conversation. There's no way to copy it down and, I'm just going to download all of these chat details. That's not there. It doesn't exist in some of these platforms. Some of them, the only way you could get it would be to screenshot each individual, part of the conversation. It's just not very conducive to saving as records, which is kind of, there's kind of a reason for that. But at any rate, here's the thing with this so-called scandal. It's a nothing. It's a grasp at a straw by the uniparty, trying to make negative story for Trump out of basically nothing. But let's address some of the accusations here one at a time, because I've seen several things kind of being thrown out there by the masses on different social media platforms. There's an assertion that somehow classified information was leaked during this conversation. Oh, but Pete Hegseth posted this classified information. He leaked it. No, that is false. That is 100% false. First off, that's not what happened. But second, classification is not an instant thing. It does not just happen because words were spoken or somebody typed a message or something like that. It doesn't, it requires some preliminary effort to establish at what level of a classification a conversation would have. You don't just go, okay, anything that between these two officials off the record in this particular White House office is automatically classified. That's not the case. So unless someone said at the beginning of that conversation, okay, guys, this is a classified communication, or, there's some kind of posting that says anything that happens in this chat room is classified or what have you, it's not classified. It's not something that just happens automatically. It might be assumed that when a conversation happens that the information would have, some level of need-to-know basis only, and that recordings or copies of that would become classified information, but it's just not an instant thing, okay? Now, I know that the government's become so obsessed with making things classified that people just kind of assume that everything that they say or do is classified, but I don't think that's reality. I mean, maybe somebody can, point me to a document or something that says different, but you can't just assume that everything is classified when there's a conversation taking place. What level of classification? What layer? There's multiple layers there of classification. So unless you know that ahead of time, you don't know. As we learned during the so-called document scandal with the president, the president is the ultimate decider in what is and what is not classified. He can go on TV and tell every single deep, dark secret of the United States, and there's not a single thing anybody can do about it. Okay? He cannot be prosecuted for it, although I would bet a lot of money that if Trump did that, some judge would try to prosecute him for it. But anyway, he wasn't involved in this particular conversation, but we don't know. He could have indicated something to this group prior to the conversation or after the conversation. We don't know. So he could have said, don't worry about it. It's not classified. Move on. We don't know. So just having a conversation about what might happen with a military strike in and of itself is not classified. Even when we later saw the messages that these people were screaming about and said, classified, it was really nothing. It had a level of information that could have been useful to an enemy that maybe had capability to do something about it, but no one on that chat would have had any expectation that the information might have been leaked out at any time. There definitely was an OPSEC, operations security component to all this. It's not something that you want to get out or you want to leak to a general audience. But when you're communicating with people in a what you believe to be a closed chat room, there's a level of expectation there. There's no reason to believe that the recipients of that information would in any way compromise what limited actionability was there. There was no reason for anyone to think that the means of conversation had been compromised. Okay, this is very much like someone using what they believe is a secured phone line and having a confidential conversation on it, and then only to find out later that the line was bugged. Well, you're not guilty of leaking information there. Okay, it's not you that leaked it. You believed the line was secure and that there was very little risk involved in passing lower level information across that line. And the information didn't contain enough specific details to compromise the mission anyway. And therefore no one, on that chat even thought twice about it being shared. They even specifically mentioned that more detailed information and planning would be given on a more secure system. This was seen as just an informal, close-knit group, and that it was secure enough. But it was not. Someone had been let into the door, and they were listening in on this conversation, and that might be illegal. And this is a tightrope that is being walked here by the people trying to make hay from this. If this information was classified and it was leaked out, then Goldberg, the journalist, was eavesdropping on this conversation illegally. An honorable person would have spoken up and said, "Hey guys, you've included me on this chat by mistake. Please drop me off." But he wasn't honorable. He's a dishonorable scumbag who was listening in. And he was doing that illegally. He was receiving the information illegally, and he illegally leaked it to the public in the article through the Atlantic. So therefore, if Hegseth is to face any kind of punishment for this, hey, people want him to resign because they don't like him. Okay, fine. Goldberg needs to be arrested and prosecuted and go to jail. And you should ask Julian Assange for details on why that is. Now let's talk about Signal itself. Back in December, the federal government's cybersecurity group, CISA, C-I-S-A, I think is the acronym there, they recommended that due to the actions of Chinese hackers and other groups, the penetration efforts that have been done to our communication networks, normal telecom networks, it was recommended that government officials and groups begin using applications such as Signal to communicate on an informal basis. So this is a recommended application. It's recommended by the so-called experts. I saw many people saying, "Oh, this was not an approved platform. They shouldn't have been using this platform." Well, any notion that this was some effort to use an unapproved platform is completely wrong. That is completely false. It was absolutely not only approved, it was recommended by the cybersecurity group, the people that should know better, right? But it does beg some questions about Signal itself, because I think there's more to this edition of the reporter than meets the eye. He's a Trump hater, okay? He's the source of bogus quotes and stories about the president. He's a known liar and a fraud. So how is it that he just so happens to be dropped into this chat? Well, he has some connections. At least to Waltz, who is the national security advisor in the Trump White House. Waltz says he doesn't really know Goldberg. He says he's not met him, which turns out to not be the case. And I'm not calling that a lie, because they were both at an event back in 2021, I believe it was, and they were both taken in a photo at that event. And that in and of itself is not necessarily evidence that Waltz actually knows him. Okay, it just means he was involved in the same event. It may be that he got, he might have bumped into the guy, got contact info. Oh, okay, and then just forgot about it. And even forgot who Goldberg was. We don't know for sure. And absent any more solid connection, we can't assume he's deliberately working with Goldberg on this situation. But it is questionable. Goldberg himself has been rather vague and insinuating. But like I said, I think, and again, this is my opinion, the guy's a sleazebag. I don't think we should. He has very little credibility. Okay, so for him to insinuate that you see us in this picture, so let your eyes speak for themselves, or what have you. He's insinuating something that, isn't necessarily there. There's another guy, though, on the Security Council, Wong, and I don't know his first name, but he's another guy who is suspect. His wife is a Chinese national, and she's a former law clerk for Democratic justices, so there may be some connections there that will come to light. It's possible that he knows or is somehow involved with Goldberg, and maybe he had something to do with adding him to the chat. I don't know if that's the case, but it's at least another potential link there, or potential leak, or suspect for the leak. Supposedly, Signal tells you who added whom to a chat, so that you can kind of trace it back. And that is how Waltz concluded that, well, hey, I must have added this guy by mistake, But there's a problem with that. And if, and I'm saying if, and I'm speculating here just to be clear, if someone on the inside of Signal were to perhaps be monitoring these communications, or at least seeing that this communication had been established and these chats, maybe they're not reading the chats or have the ability to read the chats, but they see that a conversation is taking place between these users. And they say, oh, this is something going on. I might want to add somebody to that chat. So if they have, root access at the platform level, they could mimic a user and then they could have impersonated the login of Waltz and added Goldberg to the chat. We don't know. That's a distinct possibility. I know for a fact in other platforms that is a common feature that is given to certain software platforms, where somebody who is an admin or who is an account rep or a customer service or something, people have the ability to impersonate a user. They can, hey, I've got access to your account as well, and I can go in and it looks like I'm the person that's logged in to the account. And that's done for a tech support reason. I need to see what you're seeing when you're logging in, if you're having problems. So I can mimic your login, see the platform the way you're seeing. That may be something that's there in Signal, and somebody used that to impersonate Waltz and add Goldberg. We don't know. I think that's a possibility. It's something that needs to be considered. And it could be, again, wild speculation, that Signal is compromised at a corporate level, okay, at a much higher level than just somebody who is a low-level worker at the company. This Catherine Mayar is on the board of Signal, the Signal Council, I think they call it, and she is also a high-ranking person at NPR. She just spent a day on Capitol Hill getting grilled by Congress about the money that is spent on NPR, the absolute partisan nature of so-called National Public Radio, which is, National Politburo Radio. NPR is progressive leftist scumbags who suck off the public teat to push out progressive bullshit. And she is likely not very happy with the Trump administration. So is it possible that people inside of Signal who work at different levels, I would say that it's almost guaranteed that some of them have similar views to her, and decided to take matters into their own hands. Maybe she was part of that and helped orchestrate that. That's possible. We don't know. That's something that maybe should be looked at. Maybe some questions needed to be asked. We don't know yet. It's also very possible that going back to that recommendation by CISA that, well, maybe CISA has a backdoor access to that platform, and that's why they pushed that recommendation back in December, right before Trump took office. Now, I want to kind of push on that a little bit more before I close out today. What happened last time Trump was elected? Okay, the first Trump administration, from the very get-go, Trump and his senior cabinet members were under surveillance by the deep state. All of his communication, all of the meetings, all of the movement of people in and out of the offices, all of that was being watched by FBI, intel agencies, departments within the executive branch, the tech support people, all of that. Foreign governments were used to spy on the administration to get around the rules, the FISA Accord, and all of these things. Do you think that has stopped just because Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard are in their positions? I don't. I think just because the new admin is in place, these people have taken their roles, they haven't rooted out anybody. There's still a lot of bad weeds in those gardens, okay? There are two possible things here. This gotcha moment just seems very orchestrated to me. But I know I've accidentally left someone on an email before, and it sucked. I left a vendor on an email one time in internal communication. We had a lot of people on that email, and I just missed a name. It's embarrassing. So it sucks. It's entirely possible that this was just a slip up, but it just has the flags of something else about it. It's some kind of op, I think. And we don't know if that's being done to expose the level of spying that is taking place against the admin, or was it done in an effort to try and force the admin back onto platforms that are more fully compromised? Maybe that surveillance is taking place, but they're running into problems because Trump's people have been using this app and they really don't have a backdoor access to it. Maybe Signal isn't compromised. These things that we're seeing are just kind of, I won't say coincidences, but just kind of a false lead. Maybe it's very secure, and they really just need something like this to happen so it would force the use of these other platforms that they do have more control over. I don't know. I think this is a nothing burger in terms of real world happening, but it just seems to me that there is something going on in the background here that is a little bit more. But we shall see. Anyway, that is all I have time for. A like and subscribe. Come see us over on Gab, Nice Crew, and the Mothership over at the Cold Fury blog, and I will see you on the next episode.